Hello and welcome to the Looking Glass World. My name is Aradhna Matthews and today we embark on the final part of this beautiful, magnificent book called Humankind. In the last two parts we looked at some of the well-known and world-famous perceptions and experiments and works that seem to prove the darkness in humanity and how they were absolute garbage. In part two, we looked at why, in spite of this, the negative seems to prevail and what's happening when we allow it to do so, and how it's quite literally shaping us and shaping the world we live in. Which brings us to our final part. We're going to look at some of the tips Bregman gives us on how to be a little bit more self-aware, things to watch out for, and how to potentially make the world a better place. And we're going to start with an unlikely place for me, which is a more spiritual and religious route. But here's the thing, and it's always a thing with me, it comes with logic and with science. So every Christian will know that Jesus's main teaching was love your neighbor, to not be violent, don't be angry, don't give in to those negative feelings, teaching us to turn the other cheek. So if somebody hits you, show the other cheek, don't hit back, is basically what it means. And now Bregman puts a very scientific spin on it because it's actually a term for a certain type of behavioral response, and it's called non-complementary behavior. We are designed genetically to mirror each other. So if someone smiles at you, you're more likely to instinctively smile back. So somebody treats you off the bat with rudeness and being abrasive and disrespectful, your first instinct, whether you choose to act on it or not, your first instinct will be to match that. Come at them with some kind of comeback or shut it down or defend yourself. So it's not your fault that this happens, but what you are accountable for is what you do next. And that's where the turn the other cheek or non-complementary behavior comes into the picture. Bregman gives us this as a method to hack the mirroring instinct that we have. So next time somebody is coming at you with a negative emotion, instead of mirroring it, which will only feed the wolf of darkness that we discussed last time, respond as you would want them to respond. If you want them to be calm, you be calm. If you want them to feel positive, you be positive. Feed the wolf of the light. And what might actually happen is, one, you're blocking a chain reaction of negativity that is bound to follow if you fight fire with fire. And second, you might even trigger their mirror response to actually calm down and come to your level as well. The same thing works in a business perspective, where if you're trying to sell something or pitch for an idea or pitch for a business, the kind of energy that you give to your potential client will be reciprocated. If you come out there saying, oh, I'm not sure, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that, your client is also going to come and say, I'm not sure, maybe we shouldn't do this, maybe we should wait. You come in off the bat with a confident attitude, it's much more likely that you'll get a confident response from your client. If you want to know more about that, if you struggle with public speaking and putting your best foot forward, I actually did make a course on Udemy for that. It's like a mini course. It's really just the basics if you're really struggling, but I do give you a framework that is going to work. I can promise you, if you do it correctly and you do it consistently, you will become a very, very strong presenter. So if you're interested in looking at that, or you know someone who would really benefit from that, head to the link in my description. It's all there. The camera has died on me, but that's okay. The second tip he gives us is an insight on how power and money can corrupt. Unfortunately, the world is built where the wrong things are prioritized for success. If we see 5 million documentaries about how money messed with people's happiness and mental health and how fame messed with them, somehow it doesn't register, and we still seem to think that money and fame and power are metrics for a successful and happy life, which is absolutely not the case. Not only is that the fact, but it will also change the kind of human beings we are. So a study was done on a bunch of volunteers where they were asked to first drive like a beat up old Ford something. These people drove pretty normally. Then the challenge came, which is they would have to deal with a pedestrian crossing the road. Now the pedestrian's following all the rules. They wanted to see how these people would behave. So when they're driving the busted up car that's nothing fancy, they all followed the rules. They drove fine. They stopped for the pedestrian who was crossing the road and continued with their lives. Those same people were then given a Mercedes to drive. Guess what happened? They didn't stop for the pedestrian. They zoomed on by, they broke all kinds of traffic rules, didn't seem to care that they might put somebody else in danger. And the only thing that changed was the car that they were driving. That is scary. As this experiment shows us, money corrupts the soul. It's not to say that don't earn money and don't be comfortable in life, but be self-aware. Are you behaving differently with the more success, more wealth, more status? If all of that is increasing, if your behavior towards your fellow human being is changing, or you believe in any way that you are superior just because you have a bigger bank balance, check yourself. There is one very deep ingrained fear in humans, which is a fear of not conforming to the pack. We are built to fit in. We feel safe in numbers, and therefore we are programmed to behave in a way that benefits the group. So if we have a different opinion, that might result in being isolated from a group, or there's certain actions we lean towards but the group doesn't allow, we would more likely just conform to that group. That can be disastrous. A professor did an experiment once in a really sort of elite college and started talking absolute nonsense, using technical terms, whatever, but if one person had stood up and said, "What does this mean?" he would have confessed and said, "I was saying absolute nonsense." The experiment here was not about their attention spans. He wanted to see who would question him and say that this is wrong. Not a single student stood up, because they all thought, oh, nobody else is standing up, so they must understand it. Therefore, it must be correct and I must be wrong. So I'm going to just sit here and be quiet. Now that is a hilarious but somewhat harmless experiment. A real life example of how that translates is the bystander effect. In a group of people that are witnessing something bad happen, the bystander effect is basically where you will think somebody else will do it. So if somebody says, "Somebody call the police," you will start looking around and say who will be the one who steps away from the pack and calls the police, because none of us want to be that one who takes that first step and does something different. That's what we need to check ourselves on. So Bregman points out that we need to be aware of this behavior and consciously fight it. And the last sort of tip that he has for us is be careful of what you expose yourself to. Meaning, watch things, read things that improve your life. I would still say that, yes, to a certain degree, having a balanced worldview is very important. Exposing yourself to different sides of things is important. But I agree that we must make sure that the dominant side is always the positive. So with that, we're done. We come to the end of this book. I would say this time around, I've definitely done more than 30% of the book. It's been a rather extensive deep dive into it. There's still so much more. Trust me, I emptied like multiple highlighters and pens because every second line I was learning something new in this book, and it was all incredible. And that's why I made these videos, to make sure I put this out into the world, because it deserves it. But we're done. If you want to read shorter, informative articles that are also things that you should expose yourself to, head to my website at aradhnamatthews.com. You can also join my Instagram community at The Looking Glass World. Leave me a like and a comment, and make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.